Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Because of my husband's demand, I gave up my spot for a permanent teaching position to another woman. After that, I was dismissed and lost all my income. Each month, David gave me barely over $10 to support the whole family. I clenched my teeth, stretching every cent, struggling just to survive day by day until the hardship wore me down and I developed breast cancer. Less than a month after I died, David and that woman threw a grand wedding, claiming they had always been truly in love. Because of my blind endurance, half of my life was wasted. At the wedding, my daughter even knelt down, crying as she apologized in my place and thanked that woman for being by her father's side. Then I lived again. I returned to the very day when the permanent position was mine. This time I decided I didn't want it, and I didn't want a man either. Ahead of me lay the vast open sky and the frontier waiting. This time I would go to the borderlands and dedicate myself to education there. I knocked on the principal's office door and handed her my request. "Principal Johnson, I would like to apply for a teaching assignment in the border region." She accepted my form, looked it over, and then raised her head, astonished. "Emily Miller, have you thought this through carefully?" I nodded firmly. "Yes, this is a decision I made after a lot of careful thought." "Sit down," she said. I sat as she poured me a large cup of tea, then took the seat across from me, her voice measured. "Going to the border is indeed an honor, but to be honest, it is also extremely hard. No one knows when you'll be able to come back. You've been married for less than 2 years. If you go on such a trip, there's no telling when you'll return. Does your husband, David, agree to this?" David Miller, my husband, worked as head of security at the paper mill. Lowering my eyes to the rising steam from the tea, my throat tightening, I answered softly, "Don't worry, Principal. He'll agree." Principal Johnson sighed, patting my shoulder gently, her tone softening. "Emily, what happened with the permanent position really wasn't fair to you, but your teaching performance has been excellent. Both parents and students have recognized it. Next time you might still have a chance. It's such a pity." Inside, bitterness surged. There won't be another chance, I thought. I was only a contract teacher. Yet I had ranked first in the qualifying exam for a permanent post. Just as I was rejoicing, I was struck as if with a bucket of ice water. David hid it from me and gave my rightful spot to another contract teacher at our school, Linda Carter. Not long after, I became pregnant and gave birth to our daughter. I had to teach while raising my child and later care for my bedridden father-in-law and ailing mother-in-law. From then on, I no longer competed for any permanent positions. Year after year, new teaching graduates filled the schools until there was no space left for me. Inevitably, I was dismissed and became a full-time housewife. I once thought that with David advancing in his career, my in-laws living peacefully in old age, and my daughter growing up under my care to become a college student, my life, though ordinary, would at least feel complete. But reality struck me cruelly. I was diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer and died not long after. My consciousness didn't fade. I could only watch. In less than a month, David and Linda registered their marriage and held a lavish wedding. During the ceremony, David passionately confessed his years-long love for her. My daughter, tears streaming, walked onto the stage and knelt before Linda to thank her for teaching and raising her. Linda broke down in sobs, and the three of them clung to each other, ignoring the whispers of the guests. Even in those final shreds of awareness, I trembled with rage until I finally regained clarity, only to find myself reborn back on the very day I had given up my permanent teaching position. This time I would no longer endure in silence. I looked straight at Principal Johnson and spoke seriously. "Principal, I want to be honest. My decision to apply for the border assignment is indeed related to the permanent teaching position. But it's not because of the school's decision. It's because of David Miller and Linda Carter. I worked hard for an entire year preparing for the exam. David knew, but he didn't care about my feelings. He simply handed over my position to Linda. I was devastated. Ever since Linda came to the school, he always favored her, putting her before me in everything. In a way, he has acted more like her husband than mine. If that's how it is, then I choose to leave. But even if I leave, I won't bow my head quietly. Those two despicable people. I'll make sure they're exposed." Principal Johnson stopped trying to persuade me. She stood up and extended her hand. Emily, going to the border is also a good choice. According to policy, when you return, you'll automatically be transferred into a permanent position. I'll submit your application for you. In 1 week, the support team for the border will depart. Leaving her office, I got on my bicycle and headed straight to the Paper Mills housing complex. After our marriage, David and I lived there. The red wedding sticker was still pasted on our door. I peeled it off without thinking. Oh, Emily, Mrs. Wong, the neighbor, opened her door and poked her head out in surprise. Why are you back already? It's Saturday afternoon, so I'm off. I came to pack up a few things, I replied, walking straight into our unit. The apartment was divided into 2 small rooms. Inside was the bedroom David and I shared. Outside was just a tiny space with a dining table. 1 week wasn't much time to prepare. I decided to sort through the lecture notes I had written over the years. Mrs. Wong followed me in and, seeing me tidying my books, snapped angrily. How can you still bother with that? Look over there in the front row of buildings. That Linda girl is throwing a party to celebrate her permanent position. Everyone who isn't working went to eat already. She says it's her treat, but from start to finish, it's your husband, David, who's running around taking care of it all. You think you're smart, but you've buried yourself in teaching while that fox is about to snatch your husband right out from under you. My hands froze. Mrs. Wong, did you say everyone is eating in the front row? Of course, they've set out 2 full tables, she replied. An idea sparked in my mind. I pulled a stack of letters from the drawer and narrowed my eyes. If it's that lively, I suppose I should go take a look too. The Paper Mills housing complex had 2 rows. The front row for single workers, the back row for families. Linda's late husband had been a factory worker who died in a labor accident. By the rules, Linda should not have been allowed to stay in the housing after his death, but David had helped her get her own room. I walked toward the front row. Sure enough, the place was bustling. As soon as I appeared, the people drinking and eating all paused. Linda was in the middle of pouring a drink for David. Her hand holding the glass froze midair for a moment, her face flashing unease. Then she quickly recovered, smiling warmly as she pulled me toward the table and poured me a glass of wine. Emily, this time I got the permanent position, all thanks to you and David. This glass is to thank both of you. She tilted back her head and drank it all in one go. Several young men at the table cheered her on. Linda coughed hard, choking on the wine. Drink slower, David said, scolding gently as he picked up some food with his chopsticks and held it to her lips. His movements were so natural and practiced, it was obvious he had done it many times before. Don't misunderstand, sister-in-law. A young worker sitting nearby piped up. Manager David takes care of all of us like this. The young man hurriedly tried to explain, but I only gave a faint smile. How could I misunderstand? I should also raise a glass to Miss Carter. Congratulations on receiving the permanent position. The moment the words left my mouth, the lively atmosphere at the table froze. Everyone here, whether from the factory or the school, knew exactly where Linda Carter's permanent position had come from. I drained my glass, tilting the bottom toward Linda, and said, Since we're gathered here, I also have an announcement to make. David's brows furrowed. Emily, whatever it is, we can talk at home. No, I said firmly. Since everyone is here, I'll say it now. Setting down my glass, I raised my voice. Today my application for the border assignment has been approved. I'll be leaving next week. My family doesn't have the means to throw a banquet, so I'll take advantage of Miss Carter's celebration to bid farewell to everyone before I go. The guests exchanged looks, then glanced discreetly at David and Linda. Clearly, David had not expected me to apply for the borderlands, much less to announce it at this exact moment in front of everyone. His frown deepened, his eyes fixed sharply on me. Emily, do you even know what you're saying? Of course I do, I replied calmly. I'm answering the call of the country, going to the Northwest to contribute to the education of the border regions. I feel deeply honored as my husband. Aren't you proud of me? Proud? Proud of what? David's voice rose, his face flushing with anger. Emily Miller, what are you trying to do? Choosing this exact moment to announce you're going to the border? Are you trying to humiliate someone here? Tears streamed down Linda's pretty face. Emily, I know David asked you to give me the permanent position. I understand you're upset, but you don't have to throw away your own bright future because of this. If you want, I'll give the position back. Please don't go to the border. All right. Her tears fell like rain. And a few of the young men at the table immediately spoke up in protest. Miss Miller, this isn't right. We all live in the same housing complex. We should help each other. Miss Carter's husband died young. It's normal for Manager David to look after her more. That's right. Miss Carter just got her permanent position and you suddenly apply for the borderlands. Won't people assume she stole your spot? How will she keep teaching if rumors spread like that? I reached for the wine bottle, and those who were about to speak fell silent. I poured myself another glass, drank it down, then turned to Linda. You know perfectly well that your appointment has already been approved. It can't be changed, so don't ever talk about giving it back to me again. That fake act is disgusting. Emily Miller, shut your mouth. David roared, shocked that I dared to speak so bluntly. Linda staggered slightly, biting her lip, her eyes burning with resentment. She still tried to look pitiful, but I ignored her and continued. I know I can't stop David from caring for you. That's why I'll go far away. Let him care for you however he wants. But my eyes swept over each person at the table, and I let out a cold smile. I'm just a contract teacher. My salary isn't much, and going to the Northwest to support the border schools will take a lot of preparation. I need money. Linda's face instantly drained of color, as if she had just realized something. She turned toward David in panic, but I gave him no chance to speak. Pulling a stack of IOUs from my bag, I said, We've been married for nearly 2 years, and David has never handed me a penny of his wages. According to him, life has been too hard for Miss Carter, so he's given his entire salary to her. This is the IOU. I set the stack on the table and looked at Linda. Miss Carter, as the legal wife of David Miller, I demand you repay this money to me. I had checked before. Our factory's pay scale was common knowledge. Ordinary workers get $40 a month plus about $10 in bonuses. As a mid-level manager, David's monthly salary is $70. I'm not even counting bonuses, just his base pay. Over the past 2 years, he's lent her a total of $1,680. Check these IOUs and see if the amount is correct. I laid the papers on the banquet table. With a crash, the whole table erupted like a bomb going off. People began to murmur. We should thank Linda Carter because to show how innocent she was in front of David, she really did put things in writing. $1,600 is an enormous sum, and David actually handed it all to Linda. Conversation buzzed around the table. Linda is pretty and knows how to behave. She looks fragile. She married far away, and her husband died in a work accident. Who wouldn't feel sorry for her and help occasionally? But who would give away their entire income to her? Could there be something improper between those two? In an instant, everyone's eyes on me carried pity. I had been made to look like a fool. Emily Miller, are you crazy? Someone hissed. After a tense silence, David finally exploded. He balled his fist like a hammer and lunged toward me. Hey, Manager David, take it easy. 2 young men jumped up and held him on either side while trying to calm him down. David roared. What are you saying? Emily is here just to make trouble. I spoke again, louder. I'll say it one more time. The allocation of permanent positions was my decision. It has nothing to do with Linda Carter. If you're angry, be angry at me. What does making things hard for her get you? Calm down, David. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know whether you're truly clueless or pretending to be. We are husband and wife. Legally married with our marriage registered. In 2 years of marriage, you've never given me a single dollar for household expenses. Rice, oil, salt, money for relatives, everything I've borne on my own salary. I glanced sarcastically at the banquet spread in front of us. 8 dishes with meat, fish, even a soup with meatballs. I'm only a contract teacher. My pay isn't even as much as a temporary factory worker for 2 years, except for New Year's when there's a piece of meat. Every day is just rice and clear soup. Now I'm about to leave to contribute to the country's border education. Shouldn't my husband be helping too? David's breathing came in ragged bursts, obviously furious to the point of being speechless. Linda, meanwhile, could barely stand and had to prop herself on the table. She slowly reached for the stack of IOUs, but I was quicker. I snatched them up and shook them in front of her face. Miss Carter, by next Monday, I want to see this money returned. Tears filled Linda's eyes. Emily, are you forcing me? My husband is gone. There's no breadwinner left in my home. If I had another way, I wouldn't have had to borrow. Emily, I will definitely repay all this money. But can you give me a little more time? After all, I was only just made permanent. Before that, I was a contract teacher too, earning only in the 20s per month. Linda covered her face and cried hysterically, unable to finish her sentence. A young man sitting next to her couldn't bear it and stood up to reason with me. Sister-in-law, Miss Carter is telling the truth. Look at this whole paper mill. Who could possibly pull together more than $1,000 on the spot? She promised to repay. Can you give her a few days? I looked at the young man. He had been assigned to the mill only last year as a technician. Young, simple, still naive. You're Ethan Lee, right? You were assigned to the mill last year as a technician, I said, watching him carefully as he tried to speak up for Linda. Someone murmured that Linda's husband had died because of work, and there was a burial subsidy to cover some costs. The factory even paid her a generous benefit, a one-time funeral allowance calculated as 4 months of her husband's salary, and the survivor's benefit was calculated as 15 months' pay. Ethan, you do the math and tell us how much that comes to, someone suggested. For a moment, everyone at the table was stunned. Then the room erupted with chatter. Linda's husband, Victor Dean, had been killed when he passed by the paper crushing machine. His pant leg was caught, his leg was crushed, and he died from blood loss. Everyone at the mill knew there were bereavement and survivor payments issued to his family, but no one expected them to be this large. Linda went pale and speechless, tears streaming down her face as she scrambled to explain. But I gave all that money to Victor's parents. They're old, Miss Carter. Do you want me to go ask your in-laws and see? I asked coldly. I watched her mouth tremble. She spoke weakly, afraid I would expose everything, and dared not argue further. The expressions around the banquet table had become sharply different. Victor was a key technician. His salary before he died wasn't low. Exactly. Those payments would be more than $1,000 at least. If all that money was in her hands and she spent it so casually, even using manager David's salary, what kind of person is she? Suddenly, David took 3 long strides and lunged straight at me, snatching the stack of ice and tearing them to pieces. There's no proof now, he shouted. Who says I gave money to Linda? Emily Miller. Back then, I only pretended to trick you because I was afraid you'd squander it. The room fell silent at this outburst. Only Linda looked at David with a grateful, trembling face, calling, David. Then when she turned to me, her watery eyes were filled with accusation. I stared at the torn scraps on the floor and shook my head. There was no point in wasting words on those 2 despicable people. I turned and walked straight to the factory director's office. Inside the office sat not only the director, but also the union secretary. Even better, I thought. Director Nolan stood surprised to see me and asked, Is something the matter? I nodded at Director Nolan and Secretary Grant. Today I've come to ask both of you to help me reclaim justice. My eyes were already red around the rims as I spoke. I had to admit, knowing how to play the vulnerable card at the right moment is a woman's strongest weapon. Sit down, Emily, Director Nolan said, offering water. Secretary Grant poured me a cup of sweetened water. I thanked him, took a few sips, and then began to cry. The more I cried, the louder my voice became. Thinking of my previous life, I truly felt I had trusted the wrong person. There were so many people around who could have helped me. Don't be sad, Emily. Have you had another quarrel with manager David? Secretary Grant, who is also the union president and very good at calming people, smiled kindly and urged me to speak up. If there's any grievance, tell us everything. We will step forward to criticize manager David. I dabbed my eyes with a handkerchief and told them everything. I was preparing to go to the border and urgently needed money. David had lent his entire salary to Linda over the past 2 years, and now he had torn up the oath to deny the debt. Director Nolan slammed his fist on the desk in anger. How could this happen? Don't worry, Emily. Don't cry. You volunteered to go to a hardship area to support education, and your husband obstructs you. This is unacceptable. I'll go speak with David myself. The money Linda owes you, we will force her to repay. If she refuses, I will evict her from the company housing. I was moved and looked at Director Nolan, thanking him. I knew it. There were still fair people in this world. When I left Director Nolan's office, I not only received his assurance that the money would be fully repaid to me, but also the factory's decision to support my boarder assignment. Every month, they would send me half of David's salary. After all, going to the border was an honor, and honors should be shared. As the spouse of a paper mill employee, if I was volunteering to serve in a hardship area, the factory also benefited from that honor. With that promise from Director Nolan and Secretary Grant, my heart felt lighter. I returned to the company housing to keep packing until I actually started sorting my things. I hadn't realized how pitifully little I had. I pulled down the fake red leather suitcase from the top of the wardrobe, the one I had gritted my teeth and spent a whole month's wages on for our wedding, my most valuable dowry. I didn't own many clothes, and my best pieces were all bought for the wedding. A red checkered shirt with a rounded collar and black polyester trousers. Most of the other outfits were faded from years of washing. David often mocked my clothes for being rural and old-fashioned. When we were first married, perhaps because it was still new to him, he once bought me a women's wool suit, beautifully cut, thick fabric. I had never worn it, keeping it neatly folded in the wardrobe so long it smelled of mothballs. Now that I was preparing to go to the border, where conditions would be far tougher, it was even less practical. After thinking a while, I took the outfit out and walked to a room at the far end of the west row. When the door opened, it was Mrs. Sharon Chan, the wife of Supervisor Luke Chan. She looked me up and down. What's going on? She worked at the supply store. Usually, anyone in the mill who wanted to buy something would ask her for help. Mrs. Chan, I said, I'm going to the border soon. This outfit is new. I've never worn it. I can't bring it with me. I was hoping you could help me find someone to sell it to. She glanced outside, then stepped aside to let me in, kindly pouring me a cup of water. Why are you suddenly going to the border? Wasn't it just about giving up your spot for someone else? In those days, people's sense of right and wrong was still very clear. Sharon had long found David and Linda's behavior distasteful. How he did so much for her, even giving her his wife's permanent position. Everything about you is good, Emily. You're just a bit too soft, she sighed. So, which outfit are you selling? I handed her the wool suit. She opened it up and clicked her tongue. Still brand new. The fabric's thick, and this style isn't like the ones we sell here. Did you buy it in the provincial city? Yes. Do you think anyone would want it? Why wouldn't they? She said, examining it again. Then her eyes lit up and she smiled. Emily, to tell you the truth, my son's getting married next month. I've been preparing bedding and clothes for my future daughter-in-law. You and she are about the same size. How about I buy it from you? No wonder she was quick at numbers. She worked at the supply store. Thick wool like this costs at least $31 per meter. Now a suit takes at least 3 meters. I won't ask what you paid for it ready-made. I'll pay you based on the fabric. Make it a flat $100. How about it? The suit had sat for more than a year. Getting $100 was far more than I'd hoped for. I thought a moment. Mrs. Chun, that's too much. Let's settle it at $90. Consider the extra $10 as my wedding gift for your son. In those days, co-workers usually gave towels or bedding as wedding gifts, at most $3 or $5. $10 was a large gift. Mrs. Chun grinned and squeezed my hand. Then I won't be polite. She handed me several large denomination bills. I happily returned to my room only to find David had already come back. His face was dark. Emily Miller, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I replied. I packed the stack of basic education books and my teaching notes into the suitcase. They took up more than half the space. If you really want to talk, I said, then wait until I come back. David snapped. Who knows how long you'll be gone? Then, trying to soften his tone, he forced himself to lower his voice. Emily, you went too far today. If you didn't want the permanent position, you could have refused from the start. Now Linda's already in the post, and you're stirring up trouble. You embarrassed her so much she nearly fainted from crying. And now everyone in the housing complex is mocking her. You've always been sensible. I hope you'll apologize to her. I stuffed my few remaining clothes into the suitcase, then finally looked straight at him. Thick brows, wide eyes, a firm face. He looked every bit the image of a righteous man. Suddenly, I remembered a line from a comedy sketch. Who would have thought a man with such bold features could still betray? The thought made me laugh out loud. David frowned. What are you laughing at? I'm laughing at how absurd you are. David Miller, you'd better go comfort Linda Carter. Even if she cries herself to death, she still owes me the full $1,680. If she doesn't pay, I'll raise hell in the director's office at the school, even at the Education Bureau. Emily Miller, don't you have any shame? David's voice grew harsh. How many people do you plan on humiliating us in front of? As long as Linda pays on time, no one else has to know. I pulled my suitcase along. I'll be staying at the school these days. When she gathers the money, have her bring it directly to my office. Casting one last glance at the cramped little room, I walked out without looking back. I counted what I had. Linda's money hadn't been paid yet, and my salary had always been low. Most of it was spent on family expenses. What I actually had left was pitiful. Just over $30 saved by pinching every penny, plus the $90 I just received from Sharon Chan. I planned to use this to buy books to take with me to the border. The next day, I went straight to the Tan Hoa bookstore. These days, more shops had opened, and the shelves were far better stocked. From children's comics to classic literature, both local and foreign, as well as popular science books. I picked out several of each. When I paid, my heart ached, but seeing the two neat bundles of books tied together filled me with satisfaction. I had submitted my border assignment application on Saturday morning. By Monday, the news had spread across the school. Teachers and students were all abuzz, speculating about the reason I had suddenly chosen the borderlands. Naturally, Linda Carter once again became the focus of gossip. She came to find me. To my surprise, she looked quite refreshed. Her hair was neatly curled, and she wore a blue dress patterned with white flowers, looking young and bright. Facing me, her creditor, she showed no guilt. Instead, she carried herself with arrogance. Emily Miller, was this really necessary? Just for a little money, you went crying to Director Nolan and David got scolded. Isn't it money you wanted? Here, take it. She flung a thick wad of bills at me. Where even now? And another thing, if you're leaving, don't hold David back. Divorce him. Linda Carter, do you even know what shame is? I snapped. Several teachers were still in the office. Miss White, the most outspoken, strode forward and grabbed Linda by the arm. Let's go see the principal and sort this out. You owed her money. You seduced her husband. And now you stand here demanding she divorce? With that kind of shamelessness, you dare call yourself a teacher? Other colleagues chimed in, voices filled with scorn. Unable to withstand the wave of criticism, Linda shook off Miss White's grip, stamping her foot in anger. She shouted, "Love should be free. Marriage should be free. Emily Miller, don't cling to the title of wife if you can't fulfill your duties. David is still young and you have no children together. If you're leaving, then leave. Set him free." Her words carried anger, but her eyes and the corners of her mouth were brimming with flirtation. It was clear that these past few days, David had been comforting her endlessly, likely even straight into bed. Just thinking of the few rare times between David and me in the past made me feel sick to my stomach. Miss White was so furious she nearly lunged to hit her, but I pulled her back. Sorry, but I won't divorce him. Freedom and love. David can keep dreaming. If you like him, I won't stop you. But if the two of you dare to do anything improper, I'll make sure the entire county knows exactly who you are. Linda's face flushed so red it nearly turned purple. Whether from anger or shame, I couldn't tell. You're the shameless one. It's only because you're leaving for the border that people are siding with you. This is a new era. If you're not loved, you should step aside. You're using your border assignment to threaten me. Emily Miller, you're vicious. If you think you're so righteous, then you should go too. I only smiled faintly, not angry in the least. In this life, I wanted to hold the moral high ground. If David Miller and Linda Carter were so in love, then let them be. Let them cling together, suffer together, and rot together. On Wednesday, I went home for a visit. My home was in Maple Creek Village, south of town. Calling it my home wasn't exactly right. It was really my uncle and aunt's house. My parents had died young, and it was my uncle and aunt who raised me and supported me through junior high. When they heard I was leaving to teach in the borderlands, my aunt wept until her eyes were swollen while my uncle crouched by the bed, puffing hard on his pipe. You just got married not long ago, and you don't have children yet. If you leave like this, what if your husband changes his heart? My aunt worried. I thought for a moment, then told them everything about David and Linda, so they would know the truth beforehand instead of being hurt by gossip from others. Immediately my aunt stopped crying and leapt off the bed, cursing David and Linda both. My uncle even considered hitching up the horse cart to go confront them. It took me a long time to calm him down. When they settled, they pressed $500 into my hand. My aunt refused to take it back, shoving it into my pocket. "We're not lacking this amount. The road will be costly, and you're traveling alone so far. How can you live without money in your hands?" I deliberately left the bills on the bed and quickly pedaled away. Soon the day of departure came. Our county had 5 people volunteering to support the borderlands, but I was the only teacher. Before we left, the county held a special commendation ceremony. A bright red flower was pinned to my chest as I stood on the stage, feeling both embarrassed and moved. In my past life at this exact time, I had still been drowning in despair at losing my permanent post, foolishly believing David's lies that there would be another chance. And just like that, my whole life had been destroyed. But now I stood proudly in the county auditorium, receiving thunderous applause. I believed the small, humiliated fate of my previous life had already been rewritten. The place I was assigned to teach was called Little Sand Township. The name itself suggested the reality: endless wind and dust, drought and scarcity of water. Interestingly, within Little Sand there was a village named Big Sand, and the school had been built there. I arrived on a Sunday, so the students were already on break. Principal Wong greeted me warmly and led me directly to the northeast corner of the school. There were 2 small rooms. One served as an office, a kitchen, and a dining area all in one, while the other was reserved for me. When I dragged my suitcase into the dorm room, I was stunned. Though I had come from the countryside, this place was poorer and harsher than my hometown. There was only a small earthen bed, a worn desk under the window that barely held together, and a washstand by the door. But what warmed my heart was that on the earthen bed, the blanket and mat had been neatly folded. They were clearly the newest things in the room. "Miss Miller, the conditions here really are poor." "I'm sorry," said Principal Wong. He was a man in his 40s, rough and weathered, nothing like a typical school teacher. His local accent was heavy, and he spoke slowly, afraid I wouldn't understand. I quickly said, "This is already more than enough." Principal Wong smiled kindly, then said, "Tidy up and wash your face. My wife's finished cooking. We'll eat together in a bit." His warmth melted some of the strangeness I'd felt upon arriving here. After a simple meal of plain noodles, I followed Principal Wong to tour the school. There were 2 rows of old earthen buildings, classroom desks, and chairs, both ancient and broken. Some desks were missing legs and propped up with bricks. Principal Wong sighed that life here was hard. The villages were far apart, with many children walking for hours at dawn just to get to school. Students were few and so were teachers. "Counting you, Miss Miller, we now have only 4 teachers in total." "Only 4?" I was stunned. This is a middle school, yet there are only 4 teachers? "Among those 4, you have the highest level of education," he said. I fell silent. I had only finished junior high myself. Thanks to good grades, though I hadn't been admitted to college, the village had recommended me to the school as a contract teacher. I had never imagined that here I would be considered the most educated. Principal Wong continued. "Before, teachers from other places also came to help, but the conditions are too harsh. Some arrived and complained non-stop. Some left the moment their term ended. With conditions like this and such a learning environment, many children, if they finish elementary school, that's already good enough. Those who struggle on to middle school just aim to get a diploma, nothing more. There are children who truly want to study hard, but the circumstances hold them back. It's difficult to escape this place with education alone." I stayed silent again, not knowing how to comfort this 40-something man whose hair was already turning white. "Principal Wong, don't worry. I'll do my utmost to teach here," I finally said. A hot wind swept through, rustling the only tree in the schoolyard. Sand stung my face like tiny whips. For some reason, a surge of passion rose in my chest. Emily Miller will accomplish something here. My border assignment was 3 years. During those 3 years, I taught every grade's literature classes at Big Sand Middle School. My body was exhausted, but my heart felt light. My lessons were always loved by the students. The box of books I had brought became their treasures. Every time I saw them reading intently, even asking permission to borrow books to read over the holidays, I felt deeply satisfied. In this world there is much injustice, but knowledge is fair. As long as there is a love of learning and a will to rise, results will eventually come. Here, together with Principal Wong and the others, I poured my heart into sheltering and guiding these children. When one student's essay was published in a newspaper, the child and I jumped up and down, hugging each other. When two students from this remote school placed in the top 10 of the entire county, Principal Wong sat right down in front of his office and wept from emotion. Here I sowed seeds of hope and received joy, respect, and affection from students, parents, and colleagues alike. At first, I hadn't planned on divorcing, but standing on this barren land, I suddenly realized that across 2 lifetimes, I had always let my emotions be dominated by David Miller and Linda Carter. I still had an entire bright life ahead to fulfill my ambitions. To keep torturing myself over those two was truly not worth it. In my second year teaching at Big Sand, I finally saw everything clearly and filed for divorce from David Miller long distance. When my service term ended, I submitted an application to remain at Big Sand Middle School to continue teaching. Time is a miraculous thing. It slips past without you even noticing. Over the years, with the country's rapid development, Little Sand Township was no longer a barren, dusty wasteland. Instead, it had transformed into a lush, vibrant green filled with life. I had reached retirement age, but I couldn't bear to leave the school where I had spent more than half my life. They invited me to stay on another 5 years. On my 60th birthday, I finally set off to return home. My old county had changed beyond recognition. The paper mill was long gone, replaced by a gleaming commercial high-rise.